The concept of dark body language represents a fascinating intersection of psychology, social dynamics, and nonverbal communication. While the term itself might sound ominous, it essentially refers to subtle body language techniques that can be used strategically to establish presence, command respect, and influence social interactions. Let's explore this concept in depth, examining both its applications and ethical considerations. Human communication is remarkably complex, with researchers suggesting that nonverbal cues account for between 60 to 93% of our communication. These silent signals, our posture, facial expressions, our movements, and spatial positioning, often convey more about our thoughts and emotions than our words ever could. They form an unspoken language that operates beneath conscious awareness, yet profoundly shapes how others perceive and respond to us. When we speak of mastering body language, we're discussing the deliberate cultivation of nonverbal behaviors that project confidence, authority, and social power. The intrigue surrounding this topic stems from its promise that through conscious control of these typically unconscious signals, we can significantly enhance our social effectiveness and leadership presence. Standard body language advice often centers on basic confidence cues: stand tall, maintain eye contact, offer a firm handshake. While valuable, these represent only the surface level of nonverbal communication's potential. The advanced approach delves deeper, examining how subtle manipulations of timing, intensity, and context can dramatically alter an interaction's power dynamics. For instance, rather than simply maintaining eye contact, consider the effect of holding eye contact for precisely half a second longer than social norms dictate. This minor adjustment doesn't cross into uncomfortable staring, but creates a barely perceptible tension that often results in the other person feeling slightly more invested in earning your approval. Such techniques operate in the liminal space between conscious and unconscious awareness, felt by the recipient, but difficult to explicitly identify. The effectiveness of strategic body language hinges on fundamental psychological principles. Humans naturally seek social validation and respond to perceived status and authority. We're also remarkably sensitive to subtle cues that signal someone's level of interest, confidence, or dominance in an interaction. These techniques leverage psychological principles like status signaling, nonverbal cues that suggest high social value or authority, pattern interruption, breaking expected behavioral patterns to create heightened attention, cognitive dissonance, creating slight tension that motivates others to resolve the discomfort, mirroring and rapport, building unconscious connection through subtle mimicry, controlled approachability, balancing warmth and authority to establish respect. The strategic application of these principles allows for influence without obvious manipulation. The most effective practitioners don't appear calculating. Rather, their command of social dynamics seems natural and effortless, a quality that further enhances their perceived status. Moving from theoretical understanding to practical application requires deliberate practice and contextual awareness. These techniques aren't universal scripts, but principles to be adapted based on specific situations, relationships, and cultural contexts. Consider the technique of taking up space, physically expanding your presence by sitting or standing with an open posture. While effective in many Western business contexts, this same behavior might be perceived negatively in cultures that value modesty and group harmony. Similarly, the strategic use of touch to establish connection works differently across cultural boundaries and relationship types. The most sophisticated practitioners understand that true mastery isn't about memorizing a set of behaviors, but developing situational awareness, knowing which techniques are appropriate for specific contexts, and having the flexibility to adapt in real time based on others' responses. Any discussion of influence techniques must address ethics. The line between influence and manipulation often comes down to intent and consent. Are these techniques being used to create mutual benefit, facilitate clearer communication, and establish genuine leadership presence? Or are they employed to exploit, deceive, or dominate others against their interests? The most ethical application focuses on authenticity amplification, using these techniques not to present a false persona, but to more effectively communicate your genuine thoughts, ideas, and leadership capacity. When aligned with honesty and mutual respect, these skills enhance rather than undermine authentic connection. Developing advanced body language awareness begins with observation. High-status individuals, whether business leaders, skilled negotiators, or natural social connectors, often employ these techniques instinctively. By studying their behaviors, you can identify patterns, the precisely timed pause before responding to an important question, the subtle chin lift when challenged, the strategic use of stillness to command attention. This observational learning extends to monitoring the effects of your own body language. Notice how slight adjustments in your nonverbal communication change others' responses. This feedback loop accelerates learning and helps calibrate your approach to different personalities and contexts. The journey to mastering advanced body language isn't about accumulating techniques, but developing an integrated presence. Start with foundational elements: proper posture, controlled breathing, and relaxed alertness. From this base, experiment with more nuanced adjustments. The pacing of your speech, the intentional use of silence, the subtle modulation of emotional expressiveness. The goal isn't to create a rigid, hyper-controlled presentation, but to expand your nonverbal vocabulary. Just as a skilled writer has access to a broader range of expression than someone with a limited vocabulary, developing your nonverbal range gives you more options for effectively navigating social dynamics. The most sophisticated understanding of dark body language transcends manipulation, focusing instead on developing genuine social intelligence and leadership presence. Rather than tricks to control others, these principles offer pathways to more effectively communicate your authentic self and navigate complex social environments with greater awareness. The true mastery lies not in dominating others, but in creating environments where genuine communication can flourish. By understanding the subtle language of nonverbal cues, you gain access to a dimension of human interaction that many never consciously explore. This awareness doesn't just change how others perceive you. It transforms how you experience social dynamics, bringing previously invisible patterns into conscious awareness. As with any powerful tool, the ethical application depends entirely on the person wielding it. When approached with integrity and genuine respect for others, these principles can enhance communication, leadership, and connection in ways that benefit everyone involved. The foundation of influential body language begins with mastering the basic elements that signal confidence, control, and presence. These techniques form the building blocks for more advanced methods and, when implemented correctly, create an immediate shift in how others perceive you. Let's explore these fundamental techniques that can transform your nonverbal communication. 1. Slow blinking. Project calmness and confidence. The pace of your blinking might seem insignificant, but it communicates volumes about your internal state. Rapid blinking signals nervousness, stress, or discomfort, all states that undermine perceived authority. In contrast, deliberately slowing your blink rate creates an impression of calmness and collected confidence. When someone is speaking, particularly if they're presenting a challenging idea or attempting to persuade you, slow blinking communicates that you're processing information at your own pace rather than being swept along by their rhetoric. This subtle adjustment creates a psychological advantage. It shows you're evaluating their words thoughtfully rather than reacting emotionally. Practice this technique during conversations by consciously relaxing the muscles around your eyes. Let your blinks come naturally, but with deliberate slowness. This projects an air of composure that others will subconsciously register as confidence and self-assurance. In high-pressure situations, negotiations, confrontations, or important presentations, this technique becomes particularly powerful, creating a stark contrast between your composed demeanor and others' potentially heightened emotional states. 2. Extended eye contact asserts subtle dominance. Eye contact creates connection, but its duration establishes the power dynamic within that connection. Most social interactions involve a rhythmic dance of eye contact. meeting gazes briefly before looking away. By extending your eye contact just slightly beyond this comfortable norm, you create a subtle assertion of dominance without triggering discomfort or aggression. The key lies in the timing. Hold eye contact for approximately half a second longer than feels natural. This subtle extension is registered subconsciously by the other person, creating a barely perceptible tension that often results in them feeling more invested in gaining your approval or attention. It's a powerful technique during negotiations, as it creates a psychological edge that can influence outcomes without ever being explicitly acknowledged. In practice, focus on making deliberate, unhurried eye contact. Don't stare intensely. That creates discomfort rather than connection. Instead, maintain a relaxed gaze that communicates interest while subtly establishing your presence as someone who holds their ground. In group settings, this technique becomes even more valuable, as your steady gaze will stand out amidst the typical darting eyes of those less comfortable with their status. 3. Relaxed stillness. Display control through minimal movement. Excessive movement, fidgeting, swaying, tapping, or unnecessary gesturing broadcasts anxiety and undermines authority. The ability to remain still communicates a profound message. You're comfortable in your skin and in control of your environment. This doesn't mean becoming rigid or unnatural, but rather moving with purpose and intention rather than nervous energy. Confident individuals move deliberately, showing comfort with both action and stillness. They don't feel compelled to fill silence with movement or gesture unnecessarily to emphasize points. Their stillness creates a gravitational pull that draws others' attention and respect. To develop this skill, practice maintaining a relaxed but present posture in conversations. Keep your movements economical and purposeful. If you're giving a presentation, resist the urge to pace aimlessly. Move with intention or remain centered, allowing your words rather than your movements to capture attention. In tense situations, your ability to remain physically composed while others fidget or shift uncomfortably immediately establishes a subtle dominance that can shift the interaction's dynamics in your favor. 4. High chin tilt. Signal confidence without arrogance. The position of your chin dramatically affects how others perceive your confidence level. A lowered chin signals submission or lack of certainty, while an excessively raised chin suggests arrogance. The optimal position, slightly elevated but not exaggerated, communicates quiet confidence and self-assurance. This slight upward tilt opens your body language, making you appear more assured and present. It physically expands your presence while avoiding the impression of looking down on others that comes with an excessively high chin position. Implement this technique by gently elevating your chin when speaking or listening. This subtle adjustment immediately alters how others perceive your confidence level and authority. In challenging situations, like being approached by an aggressive salesperson or facing criticism, this slight chin elevation creates a boundary that signals you're not easily intimidated or influenced. It's a physical embodiment of the prove it to me attitude that commands respect without words. 5. Taking up space. Show comfort and confidence in your environment. The amount of physical space you occupy directly correlates with perceived status and confidence. High-status individuals naturally expand into their environment rather than contracting to minimize their presence. This doesn't mean sprawling inconsiderately into other space, but rather occupying your rightful space with comfort and confidence. Avoid defensive or closed postures. Crossed arms, tightly crossed legs, or hunched shoulders all signal discomfort or insecurity. Instead, adopt open postures that take up appropriate space. Relaxed arms, uncrossed legs, and an expanded but not exaggerated chest. When seated at a table, place your arms comfortably on the armrests or table rather than tucking them close to your body. Sit back slightly rather than hunching forward, which signals eagerness to please. These adjustments signal that you're comfortable claiming your space, which others subconsciously interpret as evidence of your confidence and status. In competitive environments, This technique becomes particularly valuable as a nonverbal assertion of your right to be heard and respected. 6. Subtle touch. Demonstrate authority and build rapport. Physical touch, when used appropriately and sparingly, can be a powerful tool for establishing connection and subtle authority. A brief touch on the upper arm or shoulder can emphasize a point, build rapport, or provide reassurance in ways that words alone cannot achieve. The key lies in appropriate context and execution. Touches should be brief, light, and appropriate to the relationship and setting. Cultural norms and individual comfort levels must always be respected. In professional settings, this technique requires particular sensitivity and should generally be limited to momentary contact in appropriate contexts. When properly executed, a light touch on a colleague's shoulder while complimenting their work, a brief handshake with both hands to express genuine appreciation. This technique creates a powerful connection. It signals confidence in bridging personal space and, when done with genuine warmth, can build trust and rapport faster than words alone. The subtle authority comes not from dominance, but from the comfort and confidence required to initiate appropriate physical connection. 7. Silent smirk. Create mystery and intrigue. A full smile signals warmth and openness, but a slight, closed-mouth smirk communicates something more complex and intriguing. It suggests you possess knowledge or insight beyond what's being openly discussed, creating an air of mystery that naturally draws others' curiosity. This expression is particularly effective when listening to someone attempting to impress or persuade you. The subtle smirk suggests you're neither fully convinced nor completely dismissive. You're evaluating their word from a position of knowledge. This often motivates others to elaborate further or work harder to gain your full approval. To execute this effectively, practice a subtle, asymmetrical smile with closed lips. The expression should suggest amusement or interest without fully committing to enthusiasm. Used at the right moment, when hearing an exaggerated claim or witnessing an obvious attempt at manipulation. This expression communicates that you see beyond the surface without needing to verbally challenge what's being said. 8. Purposeful hand gestures. Command attention with deliberate movements. Hand gestures can either enhance or undermine your message, depending on their execution. Erratic, rapid gestures signal nervousness and undermine authority, while slow, deliberate movements emphasize key points and command attention. The most effective gestures are open and controlled, palms visible rather than hidden, movements smooth rather than jerky. Techniques like steepling, fingertips touching with palms apart, during key points signals confidence and expertise, while open palm gestures suggest honesty and transparency. Implement this technique by consciously slowing your gestures and making them more deliberate. Use your hands to physically punctuate important points, but avoid constant movement that distracts from your message. When making a crucial argument, a single, well-timed gesture will carry more impact than a flurry of movements that dilute attention. In leadership contexts, your ability to command attention through controlled gestures becomes a powerful tool for directing focus and emphasizing priorities. Building upon the foundation of basic body language, strategic communication techniques elevate your presence through deliberate control of timing, positioning, and nonverbal cues. These methods create subtle psychological effects that enhance your ability to influence interactions and command respect. Let's explore these more advanced strategies for powerful, nonverbal communication. 1. Deliberate pauses. Give weight to your words. The strategic use of silence is among the most powerful communication techniques. Most people rush to fill silence, speaking quickly and continuously out of discomfort with pauses. By deliberately pausing, particularly before responding to questions or making important points, you signal thoughtfulness and control while giving your words greater impact. These pauses create anticipation and focus attention on what follows. They demonstrate that you're not compelled to fill every moment with sound, a confidence that many lack. The psychological effect is significant. Your words gain weight simply because you've made others wait for them. Implement this technique by consciously slowing your speech pattern and inserting strategic pauses, especially before answering important or challenging questions. When someone asks a complex question, resist the urge to respond immediately. Instead, pause, take a breath, and then deliver your response. This brief delay signals that you're giving genuine consideration to your answer rather than offering a reflexive response. In presentations or negotiations, use pauses to emphasize critical points. The momentary silence draws attention to what precedes and follows it. This technique requires comfort with silence, which itself signals confidence and self-assurance. The more high-stakes the situation, the more powerful this technique becomes, as it creates a stark contrast between your measured approach and others' potential nervousness. 2. Steepling fingers, project intelligence and authority. Hand positioning significantly influences perception, and few positions communicate authority more effectively than steepling. Bringing the fingertips together while keeping the palms separated to create a church steeple-like shape. This gesture has been extensively studied and consistently associated with confidence, intelligence, and expertise. Unlike many aggressive dominance displays, steepling presents as thoughtful and controlled rather than confrontational. It suggests careful consideration and expertise without arrogance. Research has shown that individuals who use this gesture during arguments or presentations are rated as more knowledgeable and persuasive. To implement this technique effectively, use it during moments when you're explaining complex ideas or making important points. You can steeple your fingers either with hands raised near chest level, a more assertive version, or with hands resting on a table, a more relaxed but still authoritative position. The gesture works particularly well when listening to others' ideas. It signals that you're evaluating their thoughts from a position of knowledge. Avoid overusing this gesture, as its power comes partly from selective application. Reserve it for moments when establishing authority or expertise is particularly important, and it will carry greater impact. In leadership contexts, negotiations, or when providing expert advice, this gesture becomes a powerful nonverbal reinforcement of your authority. 3. Delayed reactions show emotional stability. The speed of your emotional reactions reveals much about your self-control and internal stability. Quick, immediate reactions to both positive and negative information suggest emotional reactivity and potentially impulsive decision-making. By slightly delaying your emotional responses, particularly to surprising or impactful information, you communicate emotional intelligence and self-mastery. This technique doesn't mean becoming expressionless or robotic. Rather, it involves taking a moment to absorb information before displaying your reaction. This brief delay suggests thoughtful processing rather than emotional reactivity, a quality associated with leadership and emotional intelligence. When receiving unexpected news, whether positive or negative, practice taking a breath and allowing a momentary pause before responding. If someone compliments your work, resist the urge to immediately beam with pleasure. Instead, take a moment, then offer a measured acknowledgement. Similarly, if faced with disappointing news, avoid immediate expressions of disappointment. Pause, consider, then respond thoughtfully. This measured approach projects remarkable stability and self-control. It suggests that you're not easily overwhelmed by emotions, a quality that instills confidence in your decision-making abilities and overall leadership capacity. In high-pressure environments, where emotions often run high, this technique creates a powerful contrast between your composed demeanor and others' more reactive responses. 4. Tilted head with direct gaze create an intense, engaged presence. The combination of a slightly tilted head and direct eye contact creates a powerful impression of both attentiveness and intensity. The head tilt softens what might otherwise feel like an intimidating stare, adding an element of curiosity or consideration while maintaining the focus and presence of direct eye contact. This dual signal communicates complex information. The tilt suggests openness and receptivity, while the steady gaze demonstrates confidence and focus. Together, they create an impression of someone who is both approachable and formidable. engaged but not easily swayed. To implement this technique, slightly tilt your head while maintaining steady, but not rigid, eye contact during important conversations. This is particularly effective when someone is sharing ideas or when you're engaged in meaningful discussion. The slight angle changes the dynamic from potentially confrontational to intensely curious, encouraging others to elaborate while still maintaining your position of evaluation. In mentoring or leadership situations, this technique creates a powerful connection, communicating both your interest in the other person's perspective and your own engaged authority. It invites collaboration while maintaining the subtle dynamic of your evaluative presence. This balance makes it particularly effective for building relationships while maintaining respect. 5. Strategic entrance. Enter last to command attention. The timing and manner of your entrance into group settings significantly impacts initial perception and status assignment. Entering last, after others have settled, naturally draws attention and creates a momentary focus on your arrival. This technique has been intuitively used by high-status individuals throughout history, from executives to political leaders. This doesn't mean being deliberately late, which can signal disrespect, but rather timing your arrival strategically. When you enter after a group has formed, you create a natural break in the established dynamic, allowing you to set a new tone with your entrance. Implement this by arriving at meetings or gatherings just as they're about to begin, rather than being the first to arrive. Choose your position thoughtfully. Central locations or positions at the head of the table naturally command more attention and respect. In informal gatherings, moving toward the center of the room rather than lingering at the edges similarly establishes presence. This technique works because it leverages the natural human tendency to notice change and movement. When a group has already assembled, a new entrance naturally draws focus. By being that final entrant, you ensure all eyes momentarily turn to you, creating an opportunity to establish your presence before a word is spoken. 6. Strong silence. Create tension that pressures others to respond. While similar to deliberate pauses, the strong silence technique specifically focuses on creating comfortable tension after you finish speaking. Most people feel compelled to fill silences in conversation. By remaining silent after making your point, you create subtle pressure that often leads others to elaborate, agree, or make concessions simply to relieve the tension. This technique is particularly powerful in negotiations, debates, or when giving feedback. By making your point clearly and then remaining silent, you shift the conversational burden to the other person. This often results in them revealing more information than they intended or working harder to gain your agreement. To use this effectively, make your statement or ask your question, then maintain calm, relaxed eye contact without speaking. Resist the urge to fill the silence or elaborate further. Allow the pause to extend slightly beyond what feels comfortable. This requires confidence and comfort with silence, qualities that themselves signal authority. In leadership contexts, this technique can be used to encourage team members to elaborate on ideas or to think more deeply about proposals. The silence creates space for reflection while also applying gentle pressure to respond thoughtfully rather than reflexively. Used judiciously, this technique can significantly enhance your persuasive impact and information gathering ability. 7. Leaning back while speaking. Signal ease and confidence. Body positioning during speech powerfully signals your comfort level and dominance in a conversation. Leaning forward often signals eagerness, sometimes even neediness or overenthusiasm. Conversely, speaking while leaning slightly back in your chair signals ease and confidence. You don't need to physically push your ideas forward because you're confident in their reception. This relaxed posture suggests you're comfortable in your position and not straining to convince or persuade. It invites others to lean in slightly to engage with you, a subtle shift in the physical dynamic that often translates to a psychological advantage. Implement this technique during important discussions or negotiations by consciously relaxing into your chair while making key points. Keep your posture open and relaxed rather than rigid or reclined, which could signal disinterest. This slight backward positioning should feel natural and comfortable, a physical manifestation of your confidence in what you're saying. In debates or disagreements, this technique becomes particularly powerful as it creates a stark contrast between your relaxed demeanor and others who may be leaning forward intensely. This contrast subconsciously communicates that you're unfazed by the conflict, reinforcing your position of calm authority. 8. Slow, deep breathing. Project calmness under pressure. Your breathing pattern directly influences both your internal state and others' perception of your composure. Rapid, shallow breathing signals stress and anxiety, while slow, deep breathing communicates calmness and control, even in high-pressure situations. Beyond the visible signals of composure, controlled breathing actually triggers physiological changes that reduce stress hormones and enhance cognitive function. This creates a powerful feedback loop. The technique both signals and creates the calmness it projects. To implement this effectively, practice diaphragmatic breathing, breathing deeply into your abdomen rather than shallowly into your chest. Before important meetings or presentations, take several deep, slow breaths to center yourself. During challenging interactions, consciously maintain this breathing pattern to remain grounded and clear-headed. In situations where others might become emotionally reactive, tense negotiations, conflict resolution, or crisis management, your visible calmness becomes a powerful asset. It signals your capacity to remain clear-thinking under pressure and often has a calming effect on the entire room. Leaders who maintain this composed breathing pattern during crises inspire confidence and stability in their teams, making this one of the most valuable techniques for high-stakes situations. Moving beyond foundational body language and strategic communication, we now enter the realm of subconscious influence, techniques that operate beneath conscious awareness yet profoundly shape social dynamics. These methods work because they trigger automatic psychological responses while remaining subtle enough to avoid triggering defensive reactions. Let's explore these powerful techniques that influence others without their explicit awareness. 1. Slow nodding. Give approval without enthusiasm. Nodding is universally recognized as a signal of agreement or approval, but the speed and enthusiasm of your nods communicate important nuances. Rapid, energetic nodding signals eager agreement and often positions you as the more invested party. In contrast, slow, measured nodding communicates a more evaluative approval, suggesting you're considering what's being said rather than automatically accepting it. This technique creates an interesting psychological effect. When someone receives slow nods rather than enthusiastic ones, they often feel compelled to elaborate or strengthen their position. The measured pace suggests you're listening but not entirely convinced, which typically motivates the speaker to work harder to gain your full approval. Implement this by consciously slowing your nodding pace during conversations, particularly when someone is trying to persuade you or seeking your agreement. Keep your nods deliberate and spaced rather than quick and frequent. This subtle adjustment immediately alters the conversational dynamic, positioning you as the evaluator rather than the eager recipient. In negotiations or sales contexts, this technique becomes particularly powerful. When someone presents an offer or proposal, slow nods communicate that you're considering it without revealing enthusiasm that could weaken your position. This often leads to better terms as the other party works to convert your measured consideration into full agreement. 2. Delayed mirroring builds subconscious rapport. Mirroring, subtly matching another person's body language, creates powerful subconscious rapport. It's a well-documented phenomenon that people feel more comfortable and connected with those who mirror their movements and postures. However, immediate or obvious mirroring can be detected and perceived as manipulation. The solution is delayed mirroring, adopting similar postures or gestures after a short delay, making the pattern less detectable while still creating the subconscious bonding effect. This technique works because it triggers the psychological principle of similarity attraction while avoiding the conscious detection that would undermine its effectiveness. To implement this effectively, Observe the other person's posture and gestures without immediately copying them. After 30 to 60 seconds, gradually adopt a similar position or movement pattern. The key is subtlety. The shift should be natural and gradual rather than sudden or exact. For example, if they cross their arms, wait a minute before adjusting your position to something similar but not identical. This technique is particularly valuable in building rapport during initial meetings, negotiations, or when working to establish trust. The subconscious feeling of similarity creates comfort and connection without triggering the wariness that more obvious rapport-building techniques might generate. 3. Foot-pointing observation. Read others' true interests. While people can control their facial expressions and upper body posture with relative ease, foot positioning tends to be less consciously monitored, making it a valuable tell for true interest and intention. Our feet naturally point toward what interests us or where we want to go, often revealing preferences that contradict what someone is verbally expressing. By observing foot direction in social settings, you can gain insight into genuine interest levels and relationship dynamics that might otherwise remain hidden. This observational technique doesn't directly influence others, but provides you with valuable information that can inform your approach and decisions. In practice, pay attention to where people's feet are pointing during conversations, particularly in group settings. If someone is talking to you, but their feet are pointed toward the door or another person, they're likely eager to exit the conversation or more interested in engaging with someone else. Conversely, if their feet are pointed directly toward you despite distractions, their interest is likely genuine. This awareness allows you to gracefully exit conversations where interest is lacking or to invest more in interactions where genuine connection exists. In professional settings, noticing that someone's feet are pointed toward a particular colleague during a discussion might reveal alliances or relationships that influence group dynamics and decision-making. 4. Over-the-shoulder glance, signal dismissal. The direction and quality of your gaze powerfully signals interest and respect. Looking directly at someone communicates engagement and acknowledgement of their importance. Conversely, giving someone a brief glance over your shoulder without turning your body toward them subtly communicates dismissal or minimal interest, suggesting they don't warrant your full attention. This technique creates a clear status differential without requiring direct confrontation or explicit rudeness. It's particularly useful in managing unwanted interactions or subtly communicating boundaries with those who might otherwise demand excessive attention or consideration. To use this effectively, when approached by someone you wish to dismiss politely, acknowledge them with a brief glance over your shoulder while keeping your body oriented elsewhere. This halfway acknowledgement signals that while you're aware of their presence, you're not fully engaging with them. Keep the interaction brief and continue with your primary focus, whether that's another conversation or activity. In professional settings, this technique can help manage interruptions without causing offense. When someone approaches while you're engaged in important work or conversation, the over-the-shoulder glance acknowledges their presence while communicating that now isn't the time for extended interaction. Used judiciously, this technique helps maintain productivity and boundaries without explicit rejection. 5. Silent stare before speaking. Build anticipation. The moment before you speak carries significant psychological weight. Most people rush to fill silence, particularly when answering a question or responding to a statement. By deliberately holding eye contact for a beat or two before speaking, you create a moment of anticipation that focuses attention on your response and subtly increases its perceived importance. This technique leverages the psychological principle of pattern interruption. The brief silence creates a deviation from expected conversational rhythm that heightens attention and engagement. The silent moment also creates a subtle tension that makes your subsequent words more impactful. Implement this by maintaining steady eye contact for 1 to 2 seconds before beginning your response, particularly when answering important questions or addressing challenging situations. Keep your expression neutral or slightly interested rather than intense or aggressive. The goal is focused attention, not intimidation. In high-stakes conversations, job interviews, negotiations, or crucial discussions, This technique ensures your words receive full attention. The momentary silence communicates thoughtfulness and self-control while creating a natural spotlight for your response. Leaders often intuitively use this technique before delivering important announcements or decisions, enhancing the weight and reception of their words. 6. Minimal smiling. Make your approval feel earned. Smiling is typically associated with warmth and approachability, but excessive or automatic smiling can undermine perceived authority and make your approval seem less valuable. By smiling selectively, only when genuinely warranted rather than as a default expression, you create a dynamic where your positive response feels earned and meaningful. This technique doesn't suggest adopting a permanently serious expression, but rather reserving your smile for moments that truly merit it. This selectivity makes your approval more impactful when it does come, as it's clearly a response to something specific rather than a habitual expression. To implement this effectively, maintain a pleasantly neutral expression as your default, particularly in professional settings. Allow your smile to emerge naturally in response to genuinely pleasing or amusing situations rather than as an automatic social lubricant. When someone shares an impressive idea or accomplishment, your selective smile becomes a meaningful reward rather than an expected response. This approach is particularly valuable in leadership positions, where making your approval feel meaningful can be a powerful motivator. Team members will likely work harder and value your positive feedback more when it's clearly earned rather than automatically dispensed. Similarly, in negotiations or evaluative situations, your selective smiling maintains your position as the assessor rather than someone eager to please. 7. Subtle expression mirroring. Show understanding without obviousness. Building on the concept of delayed body language mirroring, subtle expression mirroring focuses specifically on facial expressions. By adopting a muted version of the other person's emotional expression, you communicate empathy and understanding without seeming to exaggerate or perform your response. This technique works because we naturally feel understood when others reflect our emotional state, but we're also sensitive to inauthentic or excessive emotional displays. The subtlety is key. You're showing recognition of their feelings without overcommitting to or potentially mocking their emotional intensity. In practice, when someone expresses emotion, whether excitement, concern, or disappointment, respond with a subdued version of the same expression. If they're describing a frustrating situation with a furrowed brow, a slight furrow of your own communicates understanding without matching their full emotional intensity. This creates connection while maintaining your emotional equilibrium. This technique is particularly valuable in supportive roles, management, mentorship, or counseling, where demonstrating understanding without becoming emotionally entangled is important. It creates the psychological safety of feeling recognized without the potential discomfort of excessive emotional mirroring that might feel performative or overwhelming. 8. Strategic use of personal space. Create comfort or discomfort. The distance between people during interaction, proxemics, significantly impacts psychological comfort and perceived status. By strategically adjusting this distance, you can create either comfort and connection or slight tension and authority, depending on your goals for the interaction. Standing slightly closer than the culturally expected distance creates a subtle intensity that can be either connecting or slightly uncomfortable, depending on the context and relationship. Conversely, positioning yourself slightly farther than expected can signal disinterest or establish dominance through spatial control. To use this effectively, be aware of cultural and contextual norms for personal space. Then make deliberate adjustments based on your objectives. If building connection and trust is the goal, moving slightly closer within appropriate boundaries can create intimacy and focus. If establishing authority or creating productive distance is the aim, positioning yourself slightly farther away while maintaining engagement signals confidence and control. In negotiations or difficult conversations, strategic positioning can provide psychological advantage without explicit confrontation. Similarly, in leadership contexts, Your spatial positioning relative to team members can either reduce or maintain status differentials, depending on whether collaboration or clear authority is needed in a particular situation. As we move deeper into sophisticated body language techniques, we enter the realm of advanced psychological tactics, methods that leverage fundamental human psychological principles to create specific effects. These techniques require greater awareness and precision, but when mastered, they provide powerful tools for navigating complex social environments. Let's explore these advanced methods for influencing perception and interaction dynamics. 1. Fake curiosity. Make people feel valued. Humans have a profound need to feel heard and valued. By displaying curiosity about others, even when topics might not naturally interest you, you create positive feelings that strengthen relationships and often lead to greater cooperation and goodwill. This technique isn't about manipulation, but rather about strategically directing attention to create positive interactions. The psychological principle at work is validation. When someone believes their thoughts are worthy of genuine interest, they experience positive emotions and associate those feelings with the person showing interest. This creates a foundation of goodwill that benefits future interactions. Implement this by asking thoughtful follow-up questions, maintaining engaged body language, occasional nodding, eye contact, and providing verbal affirmations that demonstrate active listening. The key is balancing authenticity with strategic focus. Find genuine points of interest within topics while guiding conversation toward mutually beneficial directions. In professional settings, this technique builds rapport with colleagues, clients, and stakeholders without requiring deep personal connection. The small investment of focused attention yields significant returns in goodwill and cooperation. Even brief interactions where someone feels truly heard can create lasting positive impressions that facilitate future collaboration. 2. Extended silent eye contact. Create pressure to continue talking. Silence combined with steady eye contact creates a powerful psychological effect. Most people feel compelled to continue speaking to fill the void. By maintaining eye contact without verbal response when someone pauses, you create subtle pressure that often leads them to elaborate, clarify, or reveal more than they initially intended. This technique leverages the discomfort most people feel with extended silence, particularly when someone is looking at them expectantly. The resulting elaboration often provides valuable information or insights that wouldn't have emerged in a more conventional conversational exchange. To use this effectively, maintain relaxed, interested eye contact when the other person pauses naturally in conversation. Rather than immediately responding or asking another question, simply maintain your gaze with a slightly interested expression. This silent attentiveness creates a vacuum that most people instinctively fill with additional information. This technique is particularly valuable in negotiations, interviews, or fact-finding conversations where gaining additional information provides advantage. The key is maintaining comfortable, interested eye contact rather than an intense stare that might create defensiveness. When done correctly, the other person doesn't feel interrogated, but rather encouraged to share more fully. 3. Head tilt downward with upward gaze, project intensity. This specific facial positioning creates a powerful impression of focused intensity and determination. By tilting your head slightly downward while looking upward at the other person, you create what's often called the determination gaze, an expression associated with serious intent and focused attention. The psychological impact comes from the contrast between the dominant element, direct gaze, and the slightly lowered head position. This combination avoids appearing purely aggressive, full frontal stare, while maintaining the intensity that commands attention and signals serious engagement. Implement this technique during important conversations where conveying seriousness or determination is beneficial. Before making a crucial point or responding to a challenging question, slightly lower your chin while maintaining eye contact. This subtle adjustment immediately alters the interaction's psychological tone. In negotiations, conflict resolution, or situations requiring firm boundaries, this expression signals that you're engaged but not easily swayed. It communicates seriousness without aggression, a balance that often commands respect while avoiding escalation of tension. Leaders often instinctively adopt this expression when needing to convey the importance of a directive or decision. 4. Head tilt upward with downward gaze, signal authority. The opposite configuration, chin slightly raised with gaze directed downward, creates a different but equally powerful impression: quiet authority and confidence. This expression has been associated with leadership across cultures and contexts, as it physically embodies the metaphorical looking down from a position of authority. Unlike the determination gaze, which signals engaged intensity, this expression creates psychological distance and hierarchical differentiation. It subtly positions you as the evaluator or authority in the interaction without requiring explicit status claims. To use this effectively, slightly elevate your chin and direct your gaze downward when delivering instructions, making decisions, or establishing boundaries. The movement should be subtle rather than exaggerated, a slight adjustment that shifts perception rather than a dramatic pose that might appear arrogant. This technique is particularly appropriate when your role requires clear authority, giving directions, providing evaluation, or making final decisions. The physical positioning reinforces the psychological dynamic, making your authority feel natural rather than forced or arbitrarily claimed. Used judiciously, this subtle positioning can enhance leadership presence without creating unnecessary distance or discomfort. 5. Understated reactions to compliments show confidence. How you receive praise reveals much about your self-perception and status comfort. Responding to compliments with excessive enthusiasm or gratitude suggests that positive recognition is rare or surprising for you. Conversely, understated acknowledgement signals that excellence is your norm and recognition, while appreciated, isn't unexpected. This technique creates the impression of consistent high performance and quiet confidence. It suggests you're internally rather than externally validated, a quality associated with genuine expertise and high status. Implement this by responding to compliments with calm acknowledgement rather than effusive gratitude or self-deprecation. A simple "thank you" with a brief smile or nod communicates appreciation without suggesting the recognition is unusual or overwhelming. Avoid the common patterns of either dismissing the compliment, "it was nothing," or overemphasizing gratitude, "oh my goodness, that means so much." In professional settings, this measured response to praise establishes you as someone accustomed to success, a perception that often creates a positive feedback loop of recognition and opportunity. This technique doesn't require genuine feelings of superiority, which could lead to arrogance, but rather a centered confidence that allows you to receive recognition gracefully without being defined by it. 6. Eyebrow raise with subtle smile. Display intrigue skepticism. This specific facial combination, slightly raised eyebrows paired with a faint smile, creates a powerful impression of amused evaluation. It suggests you find the situation or statement interesting but aren't fully convinced, positioning you as the evaluator in the interaction without explicit challenge or conflict. The psychological effect is subtle but significant. It signals that you're engaged but not easily persuaded, creating gentle pressure for elaboration or evidence. The expression invites further explanation without direct questioning, often leading to more detailed or honest communication. To implement this effectively, slightly raise your eyebrows while allowing a small smile when hearing claims that seem exaggerated or proposals that require more substantiation. The expression should suggest curious interest rather than outright disbelief. You're inviting elaboration rather than expressing dismissal. This technique is particularly valuable when you want more information without creating defensiveness. In negotiations, team discussions, or evaluation scenarios, it encourages further explanation without direct challenge. The slightly amused quality prevents the expression from seeming harsh or judgmental, while still communicating that more evidence or explanation would be welcome. 7. Touch, when giving directions, reinforce authority. Physical touch, when appropriate and professional, can significantly reinforce verbal direction and authority. A brief touch on the upper arm or shoulder while providing instruction creates a multisensory experience that increases attention and retention while subtly reinforcing the leadership dynamic. This technique works because touch creates immediate focus and personal connection. The physical contact, when brief and appropriate, emphasizes the importance of what's being communicated and establishes a momentary leadership connection that verbal instruction alone might not achieve. To use this effectively, incorporate a light, brief touch on the upper arm or shoulder when providing important guidance or instruction. The touch should be professional, momentary, and appropriate to the relationship and setting. Always be attentive to cultural norms and individual comfort levels, as appropriate touch boundaries vary significantly. In mentoring relationships, team leadership, or instructional settings, this technique can enhance communication effectiveness and establish a positive authority dynamic. The key is ensuring the touch is clearly professional and contextually appropriate. A brief gesture that emphasizes guidance rather than creating discomfort or boundary issues. 8. Neutrality during conflict. Show emotional control. Maintaining calm neutrality during tense or emotional situations demonstrates exceptional self-control and often positions you as the most authoritative presence in the room. While others become visibly affected by conflict or tension, your steady demeanor signals superior emotional regulation and clarity, qualities naturally associated with leadership. This technique leverages the contrast effect. Your calmness becomes more noticeable and impressive when surrounded by emotional reactivity. It also creates a psychological anchor point that often helps de-escalate tension as others adjust to match your more measured emotional state. Implement this by consciously maintaining neutral facial expressions and relaxed body language during conflict or tense situations. Speak in measured tones, avoid defensive postures like crossed arms, and maintain steady but not intense eye contact. Your breathing should remain deep and regular, which both signals and supports internal calm. In leadership positions, crisis management, or conflict resolution roles, this technique is invaluable. Your visible calmness reassures others while establishing your authority as someone who remains clear-headed under pressure. It often naturally positions you as the decision-maker or mediator, as emotional control is universally recognized as a leadership quality. The final category of advanced body language focuses on creating intrigue, mystery, and lasting impression, qualities that enhance social power through psychological engagement. These techniques create subtle but powerful effects that linger in others' minds, influencing how they perceive and respond to you even after interactions conclude. Let's explore these sophisticated methods for enhancing your social impact and presence. 1. Glance and look away. Create intrigue. Brief attention followed by deliberate redirection creates curiosity and interest in most social contexts. When you glance at someone just long enough for them to notice before looking elsewhere, you create a psychological open loop, a moment of connection without resolution that naturally generates curiosity about what caught your attention. This technique leverages our natural desire for completion and understanding. The brief acknowledgement suggests interest, while the quick withdrawal creates mystery about the nature and extent of that interest. This unresolved dynamic often prompts the other person to seek further interaction or pay special attention when connection does occur. Implement this by allowing your gaze to rest briefly on someone in a social setting, just long enough for them to register the attention before naturally shifting your focus elsewhere. The movement should appear natural rather than performative, a momentary interest rather than an obvious signal. This technique is particularly effective in initial social encounters or when re-establishing connection in group settings. It creates a subtle invitation for further interaction without putting pressure on either party. The mystery element often makes subsequent conversation more engaging, as there's already an established dynamic of interest and curiosity. 2. Delayed response. Appear thoughtful and mysterious. How quickly you respond to questions, particularly personal ones, significantly impacts perception. Immediate responses suggest transparency and perhaps eagerness to share. Conversely, A thoughtful pause before answering creates an impression of depth and careful consideration that adds weight and intrigue to your response. This technique signals that your thoughts and experiences require reflection rather than automatic sharing, suggesting complexity and depth that make your eventual response more intriguing. The delay also creates a moment of anticipation that focuses attention more completely on what follows. To use this effectively, incorporate a brief reflective pause before answering personal or significant questions. The delay should suggest thoughtful consideration rather than reluctance or discomfort. Maintain comfortable eye contact during the pause to signal engagement rather than evasion. When someone asks about your weekend, your opinion on a complex issue, or your personal experience with something, the reflective pause suggests that your answer requires thought rather than being a superficial or automatic response. This creates an impression of depth that often leads to more engaged and meaningful conversation. 3. Over-the-shoulder look with half smile. Leave a lasting impression. The moment of departure offers a powerful opportunity to create a lingering impression. A quick glance back over your shoulder as you leave, accompanied by a subtle smile, creates what psychologists call a peak-end memory, a significant final moment that colors the overall impression of an interaction. This technique works because our memory of experiences is disproportionately influenced by endings. The departing glance creates an impression of continued connection despite physical separation, while the smile suggests a shared understanding or private connection that continues beyond the interaction itself. Implement this by glancing back briefly as you walk away from conversation or social gathering. Make eye contact momentarily and offer a slight, knowing smile before turning away again. The movement should be smooth and seemingly spontaneous rather than calculated or dramatic. This technique is particularly effective after positive social or professional interactions where you want to leave a memorable impression. The brief backward glance creates a moment of connection that often lingers in memory more prominently than details of the conversation itself. It suggests both confidence and interest, a powerful combination that enhances your social presence. 4. Breaking eye contact first, signal control. Who breaks eye contact first in an interaction subtly establishes the psychological dynamic. Breaking contact first from a position of engagement rather than discomfort signals confidence and self-direction. You're choosing to redirect your attention rather than having it pulled away by the other person's influence or by discomfort. This technique establishes that you're comfortable with connection but not dependent on it. You engage and disengage by choice rather than reaction. This controlled independence is a hallmark of confident, high-status behavior across contexts and cultures. To implement this effectively, maintain comfortable eye contact during conversation, then deliberately shift your gaze at a natural transition point. The movement should be relaxed and intentional rather than abrupt or evasive. You might look thoughtfully to the side when considering a point or naturally redirect attention to something else in the environment. In professional contexts, this technique helps maintain authority without creating discomfort or confrontation. By controlling the pattern of engagement, you subtly establish yourself as the pace setter in the interaction. The key is ensuring your gaze redirection appears natural and comfortable rather than evasive or disinterested. 5. Staggered smile. Make others work for approval. The timing of your smile in response to others significantly impacts the psychological dynamic. When someone smiles at you, an immediate matching smile signals eagerness to connect. Delaying your smile response by a beat or two creates a subtle earning process. Their smile comes first, and yours follows as a response rather than an automatic mirror. This technique creates a micro-scenario where your approval is earned rather than automatically given. The brief delay doesn't appear rude or cold, but does establish a subtle status differential where your positive response feels more valuable because it wasn't immediately assured. Implement this by allowing a brief moment to pass when someone greets you with a smile before offering your own in return. The delay should be subtle, just long enough to create the psychological effect without seeming unfriendly. Your resulting smile should be genuine and warm to balance the initial hesitation. This technique is particularly effective in new professional relationships or social contexts where establishing a positive but not overeager impression is beneficial. The subtle delay doesn't prevent connection, but does frame the interaction in a way that positions your approval as something of value rather than a default response. 6. Vague expressions remain difficult to read. Specific, clearly legible expressions make your thoughts and reactions immediately accessible to others. Conversely, slightly ambiguous expressions, the subtle smirk, the raised eyebrow, or the thoughtful gaze, create mystery and engagement as others work to interpret your response. This technique leverages our natural desire to understand others' reactions, especially those we find important or interesting. The slight ambiguity creates cognitive engagement as others attempt to interpret your thoughts rather than simply registering your reaction and moving on. To use this effectively, practice subtle, slightly ambiguous expressions in response to information or requests. Rather than a clear yes smile or no frown, respond with expressions that suggest you're considering multiple aspects of what's been said. A slight smirk, a thoughtful gaze, or a raised eyebrow creates engagement without revealing your full assessment. When asked about your opinion on something, responding with "it's interesting" accompanied by a slightly ambiguous expression creates far more engagement than a clear positive or negative response. The mystery inherent in your reaction often leads to more substantive conversation as others attempt to gauge your full perspective. 7. Controlled sigh, signal mild disappointment. A subtle sigh is a powerful nonverbal signal that communicates disappointment or mild disapproval without requiring direct confrontation. It creates awareness of potential dissatisfaction without the awkwardness or potential conflict of explicit criticism. This technique works because sighs are universally recognized as expressions of some negative emotion, fatigue, disappointment, or frustration. The subtlety of a controlled sigh makes it difficult to directly address, as it could be denied or explained away if challenged, while still creating an awareness that something isn't quite satisfactory. Implement this by using a soft, controlled exhale in response to information or suggestions that don't meet expectations. The sigh should be noticeable but not dramatic, a subtle signal rather than an obvious display of frustration. It works best when accompanied by neutral rather than overtly negative facial expressions. In collaborative settings, this technique can signal that a proposal or idea needs refinement without directly criticizing the person presenting it. The subtle nature of the signal often leads to self-correction as others work to address the implied dissatisfaction, allowing for course correction without explicit criticism. 8. Subtle sigh when they speak. Create pressure to be more engaging. Similar to the controlled sigh, but timed specifically during someone else's extended speaking. This technique creates subtle pressure to be more concise, interesting, or relevant. The mid-speech sigh suggests mild disengagement or waning interest, often prompting the speaker to adjust their approach to regain full attention. This technique leverages our strong desire to maintain others' engagement when speaking, particularly in professional or persuasive contexts. The subtle signal of potential disinterest often triggers immediate adjustments from speakers invested in maintaining your attention and approval. To use this effectively, emit a soft, subtle sigh during a natural pause in someone's extended explanation or story. The timing is critical. It should occur during a transition or pause rather than interrupting active speech. The sigh should be subtle enough to maintain plausible deniability, but noticeable enough to register as a potential signal. In situations where someone is being unnecessarily verbose or straying off topic, this technique can help redirect the conversation without explicit interruption or criticism. It's particularly useful in professional contexts where direct interruption might seem rude, but time efficiency is important. The subtle pressure often leads to more focused and engaging communication without requiring direct management of the interaction. As we've explored the multifaceted world of advanced body language techniques, from foundational postures to the subtle psychological tactics, that shape perception. You've gained access to powerful tools for enhancing your social and professional presence. These methods represent more than simple tricks. They form a sophisticated language of nonverbal communication that can transform how you're perceived and the influence you wield in every interaction. Now, let's discuss how to continue developing these skills and take your mastery to even greater heights. The techniques shared throughout this guide represent just the beginning of what's possible when you develop fluency in the language of nonverbal communication. True mastery comes not from memorizing individual techniques, but from integrating them into a natural, authentic presence that adapts fluidly to different contexts and relationships. This integration requires consistent practice, thoughtful observation, and continued learning. What you've discovered so far provides a comprehensive foundation, but the journey toward complete mastery extends far beyond these initial insights. Each technique can be refined, combined with others, and adapted to your unique personality and circumstances. The most powerful practitioners don't simply apply techniques mechanically. They develop an intuitive understanding of social dynamics that allows for real-time adaptation and response. Future explorations will delve even deeper into specialized applications of these principles. How to adapt these techniques for specific high-stakes scenarios like negotiations, leadership challenges, public speaking, and interpersonal conflict resolution. We'll examine contextual variations, how these same principles manifest differently across cultural boundaries, professional hierarchies, and relationship types. We'll also explore the fascinating intersection of verbal and nonverbal communication, how specific language patterns can amplify or undermine your body language effectiveness, and how to create congruence between what you say and how you physically present. This congruence is where true authenticity emerges, creating a presence that's both powerful and genuine rather than performative or manipulative. Advanced practitioners understand that the highest level of mastery involves not just projecting confidence, but developing genuine internal stability, the emotional regulation, self-awareness, and interpersonal intelligence that allows these external techniques to flow naturally from internal strength. Future guidance will bridge this gap between external presentation and internal development, showing how mindfulness practices, emotional intelligence development, and psychological flexibility enhance your nonverbal influence. The journey toward mastery is accelerated through connection with others on the same path. By subscribing to this channel, you join a community of individuals committed to developing exceptional social intelligence and presence. Each video builds upon the foundation established here, introducing new techniques, refinements, and real-world applications that enhance your ability to navigate complex social dynamics. Regular engagement with this content creates a continuous learning environment where techniques are not just memorized, but internalized through consistent exposure and reinforcement. The most successful practitioners make this learning a consistent part of their personal and professional development, incorporating new insights as they emerge and adapting techniques to their evolving circumstances. Your active participation through likes, comments, and sharing creates a valuable feedback loop that shapes future content to address the specific challenges and opportunities you're encountering. This collaborative relationship ensures the guidance remains relevant, practical, and aligned with your evolving needs as you develop greater sophistication in your practice. The transformation from understanding these techniques intellectually to embodying them naturally requires deliberate practice. Begin by focusing on one technique at a time, practicing it consistently in low-stakes situations until it becomes comfortable. Observe how others respond to the adjustment and refine your approach based on these observations. Gradually incorporate additional techniques, always maintaining authenticity rather than mechanical application. Record yourself in practice situations to observe your nonverbal communication objectively. This self-observation often reveals patterns and opportunities for improvement that aren't apparent in the moment. Work with trusted colleagues or friends who can provide honest feedback about how your presence is perceived and what adjustments might enhance your effectiveness. Remember that mastery involves contextual intelligence. knowing when to apply which technique based on the specific situation, relationship, and objectives. The most sophisticated practitioners develop an almost intuitive sense of which approach will be most effective in a given context, adapting their presence fluidly rather than applying techniques rigidly. To continue this journey of mastery, take 3 specific actions today. First, subscribe to ensure you receive each new installment in this ongoing exploration of advanced influence techniques. Each video builds upon this foundation, introducing new dimensions of mastery that expand your capabilities. Second, engage with the content through likes and comments, sharing your experiences and questions. This engagement not only supports the continued development of these resources, but connects you with others on the same path of growth and mastery. Finally, commit to deliberate practice. Select one technique from this guide that resonates most strongly with you and focus on implementing it consistently over the next week. Notice the responses you receive and how the technique feels as it becomes more natural with practice. The journey toward mastery begins with these first intentional steps. Your potential for developing exceptional presence and influence is limited only by your commitment to consistent practice and continued learning. The insights and techniques shared here provide a powerful starting point. Where you take them from here is entirely up to you.